You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to thewritingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Writing Community Chat Show. We are in episode 3 of season 14 and we are very excited as always to get back into this show. If you are new to this show, hello, welcome. My name is Chris. I go by CJ because my co-host is also Chris and that's very confusing for you all. But we are here. I put a post out in the week saying that we're both authors and we did this show because of the writing community. This is the Writing Community Chat Show. So welcome. Please send in lots of questions in this interview. Chris, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for that midweek pressure, by the way. Little reminder that we're both authors. I was like, oh, I better write something then. Halfway through the week. But yeah, I thought it was good. Venturing over there to the old TikTok. You know, I saw a video afterwards that said, where are all the 30 plus influencers? And I was like, Agat's on his way. Don't worry, he's coming.
30 plus. Well, yeah, like, this, my friend.
Yeah, well, you know, I was being generous. I wasn't going to say 40 plus. But my point was, you could be an influencer. You've got a very good persona on camera, and you definitely influenced me to write this week, so that was good.
Well, technically an influencer then. Yeah, 40 definitely. I said to my wife earlier, we were out shopping, and I said, I don't feel like I'm 40. I feel like I'm 30. So that if that counts, I've just knocked 10 years off my life.
I did that to you as well. So go with that. Go with 30, Chris.
Yeah, I'm just 30. Yeah. That's better. I'm sure it is. Well, with that in mind, we talked about the book club, writing club you started last week, Chris, with the accountability partners and group, which is brilliant. Since then, I've not written anything. And purely, it's not through lack of desire. This is through lack of time. And I know on this show we've talked about if you want to have the time, you can find it. But I've been so busy and we're working on things behind the scenes. Me and Chris have got a very special project on the go. So things are very busy and my creative time has been put elsewhere. So I'm really sorry to those people. I have not yet read their works. I know you have. I have not yet written. I know you have. So I will be catching up on those and I'm sure I'll hear all about it in tonight's after show. If you are interested in the after show and want to be part of that and come on screen with us and chat to us, which gets pushed into our Patreon and our YouTube members, you just need to get in touch and we'll show you how to do that. And we share each other's writing and we critique in the best kind of way. And it's really good. It's great motivation for people who have more time than I do. But Chris, you've done well this week.
No, I didn't. I panicked this week. I read everybody else's work and I was like, oh, this is really good. And then I realized it was Friday and was like, oh no, I've got to put some of my own work in. So I spent this afternoon doing that and getting some work in there. But again, really good stuff in there. And I feel like I can hear my children. So I might have to go and tell them off. So I've never had to do this on the show before, but I'm going to do that whilst you introduce the guests.
That's amazing. Hello to everybody in the chat. Thank you so much. Halo, you've been a star since day one. You were our first guest. Of course, you have been a star since day one. Anna, always so amazing on the show. And so Anya as well. Thank you so much for taking the time on a Friday to come and join us and to listen to our guests talk because there's so much value in every one of these shows. And it could be from something completely random or through something they've learned as well. So we got a very good guest coming up tonight with the author of The Switch, and we're going to talk all about that as well. Please, if you've got questions, send them in. If you know somebody that could benefit from this show, and I'm sure some of you do, please drop them a message or share this on socials, give them a tag, because there's lots of people that can learn from this. And this is what this is all about. It's about having fun on a Friday, learning about the writing, and enjoying yourselves and getting ready for the weekend. So Chris is back. How did that go, mate?
I told them if they weren't quiet, then they wouldn't be playing on any PlayStations or consoles. So I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so Chris is back, so I will do the intro. He is here, and we're ready to go. So hopefully you are as well. So today's guest is an Oxford-educated author and a professional in the publishing world who divides her time between the vibrant cities of London and Paris. When she's not immersed in the literary world, she enjoys watching Hitchcock movies and expressing her creativity as a freelance artist. Her debut thriller, The Switch, has taken literary scene by storm, earning accolades such as a Sunday Times-style hot read and being listed among the Cosmopolitan's best books of 2024. This gripping psychological thriller promises to keep you on the edge of your seat with its shocking twist and complex characters. We'll be discussing her journey as a writer, the inspiration behind The Switch, and what it's like to craft a debut novel that is both thrilling and thought-provoking. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the incredibly talented Lily Samson. Hello, Lily.
Oh, hello. Hi. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
You're very welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, I've just had my Waitrose chocolate, so I'm raring to go now. Yeah.
The staple of every author. Nice bit of chocolate. Yeah, brilliant. Where in the world are you coming from? So our learners, getting that medal up, our readers, and oh my god, and that as well, our viewers can kind of get a gauge for that.
Oh, so I'm South London, and I'm near Wimbledon, where The Switch is set, but not in the posh village bit. I'm definitely not living there, but not far from Wimbledon.
So how close is that to the famous tennis Wimbledon scene?
Because there's Wimbledon Village, which is where all like the millionaires are, etc. And then I think not far from there is where the tennis happens. Because every year, like when Wimbledon's on, the station is so crowded and it gets really, really busy, and like loads of people going in and out of the station. So I always know what's on. Yeah.
Have you been?
No. I don't watch or practice any sports whatsoever, I'm afraid.
Sport is not for me. Yeah. Brilliant. So we will get into your road to writing shortly, but we love to chat as you first come on. But I love to ask our guests where they're from and if that has a great writing scene in terms of being able to link up with other writers. How is it to kind of promote your book in there? And there's talk about you being in Paris and in London. So I'm really intrigued to know what the major differences as an author are between the two cities. And do you ever get involved with anyone in that style, in that sense?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I kind of feel like this biography makes my life sound a lot more glamorous than it actually is. It sounds great when you read it, but I don't know. So, so basically my partner, Andrew, lives in Paris and he teaches at the Sorbonne. So every month I go over and spend some time with him. And so, yeah, sometimes we have been to events at Shakespeare & Co. bookshop, the famous bookshop. That's a really exciting, buzzy literary scene because we have been to like some launch parties for Deborah Levy and so on. That was great. But as for like here locally, I don't know, like not really a lot going on. I can't really write at home. I have to write in cafes. But so my writing life is like quite isolated really. And because I get a bit lonely and also because it's quite hard to write at home because I've got caring duties and so on, I do tend to go up to cafes and write. But I don't know, I'm not really part of any scene. When I used to live in Manchester, that's got a really warm, vibrant scene in Manchester that really supports new writers and that's very good. So,
yeah, I can imagine it's quite frustrating as an author. You've got Paris, which is like cultural capital of the world of arts and just amazing creativity, and then Wimbledon, where people on pet shows ask you about tennis. And we go, no, that's what it's famous for, tennis. It was right to ask, Chris, but it would be frustrating as an author coming from that and seeing that.
Wimbledon is world famous, and as you're quite right, it is. Paris is absolutely amazing. Not that I've been there, but it's really interesting to see how people kind of link in with their local communities. And as you mentioned before, being a recluse is quite a natural talent of an author. So it is interesting to see if people go outside and kind of link up. But interestingly, people writing in cafes always fascinates me. What's the best experience you've had writing in a cafe? Has it been something weird, or have you seen someone in your kind of view or walking past that you thought, I have to write about that person?
Okay, well, just in terms of like conceiving the idea for The Switch, it was like the 1st of July 2021, and I was sitting in a cafe and I decided I want to write a thriller because I really like the way that the thriller genre has evolved. Beyond police procedurals, which I do like, but and say car chase thrillers towards this sort of mix between, say, women's fiction and noir, that the domestic thriller, basically, the psychological thriller. I find that very, very an interesting space, and I really love thrillers like B.A. Paris's Behind Closed Doors, about a woman who ends up marrying a psycho and so on. And that was a fantastic thriller. So I really wanted to come up with a good idea for a thriller, and I just remember sitting in a local patisserie Valerie, which has since closed. And I loved being in there because it was hot. It was empty most of the time, unfortunately. Therefore, it did close.
Maybe why it's
The
closed.
best cafes are the ones that I'm always trying to seek out cafes that are massively unsuccessful, probably partly because, I don't know, location, staff, crap service, bad food. But I love those ones because then like there's not many people around, and it's almost like you've got your own like little space. So I'm always seeking those ones out, and then I just remember I was in it for 3 hours, and then after 3 hours of brainstorming and just writing out every idea I could in my notes, I came up with the idea for The Switch. And immediately my heart leapt, and I was like, yeah, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing that, like in London now, if someone sees Lily coming into the cafe, they'd be like, oh, crap. Are we the one? We're closed next. Sorry, guys.
I was thinking, yeah, I could be a sort of figure of doom, really. I sort of signify your cafe's going downhill.
Yeah, brilliant. Greasy cafes. Yeah, I love it. Okay, what we're going to do is going to play part 1, which is the road to writing. We're going to talk about your journey to where you are now, and talk about how writing became something in your life, which always kind of holds its own little values and tips in there. So we'll play this video and we'll get stuck into your road to writing. Lily, do you remember the very first time in your mind writing was like something that called you and you felt the urge to do it? And what were the inspirations behind that?
So it was when I was maybe about 7 or 8 years old, and it was definitely reading Roald Dahl. And I grew up in like a family on benefits because my dad lost his job and he became really ill. But my mum, she was so wonderful, my mum, because she would go to jumble sales, car boot sales, and she would just bring back 2 massive bags of books. And then I was a total introvert, as we were just discussing before came on about how writers and readers were very introverted. I was a complete introvert, hardly spoke to anyone, just in the playground, always reading a book. And I love Roald Dahl most of all, especially Danny the Champion of the World and the Witches and Matilda. And he just made me want to be a writer from about the age of 7 or 8, and I started writing my first like mini stories around then. Yeah.
Wow. Do you have any idea if those stories are still? Do you like know what those stories were, or do you have evidence of those stories still?
No, but I've got. So when I was a teenager, that's when like my writing addiction really kicked in, and I say addiction because I feel like, yeah, I've got to write, and I feel like really agitated and uncomfortable if a few days go by and I haven't written. And I do think it was partly reaction to like lots of trauma and bad things happening in the families, but then you've got this amazing world that you escape into. And that's the thing about Roald Dahl, isn't it? His worlds that he creates are so magical, beautiful, fantastical, extraordinary. You're just in this amazing place. And I used to feel like that when I was writing when I came home from school. And And I definitely had some rejection letters from that period. I know from publishers sort of sending out pretty bad books because I was only like 14 or 15. I know I was always trying to rewrite. And this feeds into The Switch. You can see this is like I loved the film Dangerous Liaisons with John Malkovich and Glenn Close. And I was like one of those films that, you know, when you're a teenager and you watch or read something that just really sort of punches you in the heart because you're kind of innocent and it really shocks you. And I just remember being so shocked by that film and I loved it. And I was always trying to do like bad rewrites of Dangerous Liaisons, of course, and for teenagers. And of course, later on, you've got Cruel Intentions coming along and doing that as well. But so I was sort of always trying to do that. And of course, The Switch, you can see there's a bit of Dangerous Liaisons and Games of Seduction in there. So eventually I got there, yeah.
Yeah. So interesting then how your writing obviously evolved from being a 7-year-old into a teen with you getting those rejections early on. How did you develop your writing and your kind of techniques along the way? Was there a learning process for you, or did you just kind of feel yourself how things were going and adapt that way?
Well, I never did say an MA in creative writing or any creative writing courses because like there weren't that many around when I was like in my 20s. But I did do an English degree. But that said, it was quite traditional. And I really set about just reading like mad. And I think that's where I began to learn to write. And I also did do one course, that was the Robert McKee screenwriting course. And I don't think that was really helpful because although I wasn't very good at scripts and books are definitely my forte, he explores structure and story writing structure, and that was actually quite helpful. And it was the first time I'd really been introduced to the idea of a 3-act structure. And now I would generally, if I'm planning a book, I would initially have like 3 acts and then 5 acts now because I quite like having 5 sections. And I do really value that when I'm plotting.
Yeah.
Nice.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say, Lily, like obviously with your inspiration being rolled out in the writing world in particular, what drew you then to writing a domestic thriller? And if you'd gone at it with this sort of idea of going, do you know what, I really love Roald Dahl's stories and the magic that he creates, and then you've gone, oh, actually, I really like Dangerous Liaisons and what they're doing, and then you've come up with your own idea. How did you sort of navigate that in the initial instance? Like, what was that planning that novel like when you sat down to get it all out?
Well, so the book is kind of inspired by this Roald Dahl twist in the tail short story called The Great Switcheroo. So I remember that moment when like I transitioned from reading his children's books as a teenager to his sort of Tales of the Unexpected, and of course really different flavor and very macabre. And The Great Switcheroo was about 2 men who swapped their wives in secret at night without them knowing, because these 2 men live opposite each other on the same street. And they sort of plot to do this by climbing upstairs and checking where it creaks and so on. Of course, it's a very controversial story regarding issues of consent, and it has been accused of being quite misogynistic, and it was initially published in Playboy in the late 70s, when, you know, those kind of stories were just like, everyone just was fine with that at the time, and it's all changed now. So that story was my spark of inspiration, because in a way, Roald Dahl's twist in the tail stories have shades of domestic thrillers. I mean, he often did, like, say, the story Lamb, that fantastic story about a woman who murders her husband. I mean, it's those domestic settings, aren't they? And he tries to make, in the way that a domestic thriller is about extraordinary things happening to ordinary people, in a way, Dahl was always trying to play with that with his stories. He was always trying to make these crazy ideas completely believable. So he would pay so much attention to detail, as he did in The Great Switcheroo. So I decided to reverse the premise and have 2 women in Wimbledon, of all places, who plot to swap their male partners in the dark at night without them knowing, and whether they can get away with this. And when I came up with that idea, I was just really excited. I thought it was just such an interesting idea to explore. Why would they do it? What would the consequences be? And how would they deal with the guilt, and how would it all unfold, and would they be found out? And so that was when I came up with the idea for it. And unusually, because I'm not having this with my second thriller, the idea just came out fully formed. Like that day, I just knew this is the book, this is my big twist at the end, this is the shock, this is what it's going to be. Yeah.
Wow. It's great when that happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
Halo said, Ray, hang on, how to say that? Bradbury was my first heart punch. In the corner of my eye, this little thing, I thought she said Ron Burgundy. I love Ron Burgundy. Brilliant.
Yeah.
So
Ray Bradbury is a great author.
Yeah.
I can see why that could be plenty of books that he's done that could be a heart punch moment. But yeah, I really like what you said there, Lily, about the sort of switching it up, pardon the pun, and changing the concept of it. How did you approach that for a more modern audience, where an idea of maybe switching sexual partners in a deceptive way could be a bit like, I don't know where I'm going with this question, because I was basically going to say it could be deemed more, exactly. And but at the same time, in a more modern society, people are a bit more liberal as well in terms of switching partners. You know, for some people, there was a big Netflix documentary recently about it. Like, you know, some people are absolutely fine with that. So how do you toe the line then with something like this in terms of making it believable and making your reader invest in the idea?
Well, I think so there's so many interesting topics to address from that question. So I think so I paid homage to Roald Dahl when I was writing it, and publishers like that. It wasn't like I was just pretending I came up with the idea. Like, the characters in the book actually read the Roald Dahl story and they're inspired by it. So I sort of acknowledged that he was the inspiration. And so, but I think in terms of this sort of controversial issue, and it has made the book quite divisive, and I am having to address it, because some people totally love the thriller and they go with it and they're turning the pages, and some people don't take it too seriously, or some people just enjoy the ride, and then other people are really shocked. Wow, this is very controversial subject, and this is just so bad on these male characters, and so on and so on. But I think the thing is to remember that it is actually a crime thriller. And I know that most crime thrillers revolve around murder, and we're so comfortable with murder because we grew up with Agatha Christie and we play Cluedo. So when you've got some horrific murder at the center of your crazy crime, no one questions it. Everyone's, that's totally fine. But then, so my crime is, I suppose, more unusual, and it shocks people as it should. I mean, murder should shock us, but somehow it doesn't anymore within the context of fiction and TV. Well, less so, I think. So, and when Sophia, who is the sort of glamorous, I think, villain, she is sympathetic sometimes, but the villain of the book says to Eleanor, "Let's do this swap." She uses various arguments, and I have found that some people who read the book, they mistake me for my character. I am different from my character. She is my creation, and I don't agree with the arguments she makes when she's saying to Eleanor, she's saying, well, the men won't really mind, men love sex, blah, blah, blah. But these are just her ways of trying to persuade Eleanor to commit the crime. So it is very much about, I'm looking at amoral characters doing something, committing a crime, but that is what crime and thrillers are about. And I'm not, it's not, I'm meant to be a handbook for swapping husbands, etc. And as I say, I am separate from the views of my characters. I'm just creating interesting characters, as with any crime or thriller. So
I think if you wrote a handbook about swapping husbands, you might get loads of books sold.
That's true.
In your bio, it's mentioned that you really enjoy Hitchcock movies. They're very great movies from a long time ago, and obviously they were an inspiration for you. But did they inspire your writing?
Definitely. Oh yeah. I mean, what's your favorite Hitchcock? Because mine's Vertigo, without a doubt.
I think The Birds for me, was really unique and just different, and I think that's classic.
Great. Yeah, I was going to say The Birds as well. Terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the
It's one of
birds.
those. It's one of those things when they talk. Yeah, when you talk about the most effective kind of film or novel or scary kind of subject is always the thing that's really there and close to home and you don't think about. So the
Yeah.
birds for me was something that, imagine, because we have flocks around here. I'm sure they're not called flocks. These birds that fly around and they do amazing like kind of sequences. You could just imagine if they all turned against humans in whatever way. There's a lot of birds flying around that could do that. So yeah, I think that's one of those that was kind of one of those close to home things, you know?
Yeah.
Lily, I'm going to go fishing for a writing tip now, because obviously we have a lot of people that watch this show. But I'm going to ask if you can give us your best tip for writing a domestic thriller, and then your best tip for writing a more provocative scene, because some people struggle with that. So I'm sure they would appreciate tips in both categories.
So my best tip for the first draft of The Switch that I wrote in the summer of 2021, like it just wasn't exciting enough. So because I had to set up the idea, and this is one of the problems when you're trying to set up this interesting idea. So it takes quite a few chapters, 4 or 5 chapters for you to sort of say, well, the two women meet and then they just get very close and then they trust each other and then they decide to do the switch, and then how are they going to do it? So I had this big problem because I kind of thought this is really interesting, but the reader doesn't really get excited until about page 7. And my big tip with a domestic thriller is that you've got to grab them from the very first page. I mean, that's essential, because especially if you're going to be sending this out to agents, and agents are so busy and tired and overwhelmed, you just got to hook them from that first line. And I think the first chapter, it's just got to be so exciting and so engaging. And then, so I let the book go. And I think this is another writing tip as well, is that sometimes just letting something go and letting your subconscious have that time to figure something out is really good as well, instead of just going crazy and getting frustrated. So I just kind of let the book go and I forgot about it for a few months. And then I was in Waterstones Piccadilly one day and I just had that moment where you go, that's how to do it. And I thought, instead of just beginning with the setup, I'm going to begin right in the middle of things. It's the night they're doing the switch and it begins with that. And she's literally just about to go over. And then it alternates between past and present. So you've got the switch unfolding in real time, the two women swapping and walking down Wimbledon and going into each other's houses and taking the big risks. So there's all the energy and the excitement of what they're doing. Are they going to get away with it? And are the men going to find out? And that's alternated with the past chapters, which are slower and they set it up. And so I've got this nice alternation between fast and slow and character and plot, if you like. Because I always feel when you're writing a thriller, there's always a bit of a tug of war between character and plot. If you go too fast, then all your twists become very contrived because your characterization isn't deep enough. So you've got to make space for character, but at the same time, you can't be too slow. But what did you mean by writing a provocative scene? Do you mean like a sex scene, or just a
Yeah, I was. Yeah, well, both actually. To be honest, a controversial scene that people maybe feel a bit icky about, but then also a sexual scene as well, because again, a lot of writers that we have on the show, one, we don't really explore that idea often because it's not something that crops up all the time, and two, I think it's one of the things that from all the conversations I've seen about writing, people either shy away from it and don't do it at all, and they're like, I'm not writing a sex scene, that's not for me, it doesn't fit in my sort of arsenal, or I feel uncomfortable. Or they try it, and 99 times out of 100, people go, "Oh, it's awful. I don't like it," but it's necessary, so it's staying in there. So, what would your advice be around those two areas? The sort of creating that icky moment, and then a more sexual scene.
I don't know. I quite enjoy the icky moments. I mean, I quite enjoy when you're going in something. In a way, like if you're doing a more controversial or provocative scene, it's more fun to write than something that is more subtle and mundane, and you've got to make it interesting. But I think obviously in terms of just being liberated, I think you've got to write without judging your characters. So maybe your characters are doing pretty bad things or they're having a bad discussion, but it's not really your job as a writer to sort of judge them or to sort of teach them a lesson, because that's what fairy tales do. But when you're writing adult fiction, it's really just about who are your characters and what do they do and what's true to them, because in a way, whatever, you know, their actions will have consequences, and that will unfold in the book, and that is really what you're exploring, and that's the morality, I think, of the book, that it comes out in their actions and how it affects them. So therefore, not to sort of judge them or just let them be true and real and really think, who is this character and what's happened to them, and so what's their motivation for being like this, and to a certain degree to have that complete love for your characters, even if they're very dark, to think, well, maybe they've come from a dark place, maybe they've grown up with these very difficult things. So on some level, to love all your characters, I think, no matter how good or bad they are. And in terms of a sex scene, again, I quite enjoy writing them. So there we go. But and again, I always think, well, you know, I think again, reading is, I keep thinking, coming back to the idea that reading is learning, and so I guess when you're reading a book, analysing, you know, what did I like about it? I suppose a lot of good sex scenes should involve plot foreplay, so they should be built up to through subtleties and gestures and then gradually sort of introduced, so that you're building a kind of frisson of anticipation, and obviously don't have your sex scene too early, so that you build up to it, because that's more exciting for the reader. It's kind of a will they, won't they situation. To always sort of delay those kind of scenes. And then again, just to be totally uninhibited, forget that anyone's going to read it, and then let it flow out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always one of those awkward things when you've got friends or family reading it and you know there's sex scenes in there. It just gets really uncomfortable for a little while, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Really, really embarrassing.
Yeah. But
I
I'm
don't
really
really want my family reading The Switch. No.
yeah. I'm interested earlier on, before we move on to the next phase of the show, you mentioned how you were writing the novel and you knew it when you first kind of went over it, it wasn't exciting enough or engaging enough, instantly. It's a really interesting thing to hear that and to have someone who's gone through that. But what can you give advice for if you're in that situation? If you're reading your debut novel or any novel and you're thinking, this just doesn't grab me in the right way, what advice have you got, or what tips can you give to kind of help them improve that situation?
Well, I think one thing that you can do is that you start with the classic. You start with a classic, say, drama that's in the middle. You create a prologue. I mean, and then so you start with some very dramatic situation, a murder, a shocking situation, and then you go into effectively the past or a flashback that then builds up. So what happened? You know, you could. I'm reading a really good thriller at the minute called The Good Girl, and it begins with a kidnapping, and then the victim is returned, and it's gradually unfolding, well, what happened. So I think if you start with the shock and then you explain, that's always like a fantastic device to use. Another great thriller is Lisa Jewell's None of This Is True, and because she frames her domestic scenes with a documentary, again, she's doing similar things all the way through the book. You know that murders will happen. You get these little seeds and these clues and these hints, but you don't really know how. So as these more domestic and slower scenes are unfolding, there's this atmosphere of tension, of something sinister in the background, that because you know, well, there's going to be murder, there's going to be this, that. So I think finding devices, and again, also Ruth wears the cabin. Is it The Woman in Cabin 10? I hope I've got the title right.
Sure.
Again, she does this. She goes on this cabin journey, and then suddenly, in the middle of the book, you're getting emails through from her concerned boyfriend. What's happened to her? You as a reader don't know what's gone wrong yet, but so it's this intercutting of past and present and future, I guess. It's playing around with your timeline to make it engaging, so that you're giving readers teasers of what's happened, or you're going back into the past to explain what's happened. All these devices, I think it's just play with your timeline, and then that will make it more exciting.
Yeah. It's the intrigue factor, isn't it? And that's something that really draws me in. So I think, as you said, if it hooks you because there's a question to be answered, you want to know what the question is, or what the answer is as well. So I think that's a really good advice. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'm going to build on that, Agate. Not because I feel like I'm a master of advice or anything, but I read a book today, and it was playing around with timelines. And I'm not going to say the book, just because I'm not. But it was a crime thriller, and it was playing around with timelines. And what I thought was, there seems to be a hook at the end of every chapter. So when I'd finished the book, I went back and I read the last chapter, the last sentence of each chapter, to see if I would get the gist of the story. And I did. And I thought that, from a writing point of view, that could be a really good idea. Look at the last line of each of your chapters, see if it's embedded that hook, and see if it runs through out the novel. And then, if it does, then you might be onto. And it is a multi-million best-selling book, so might be a way forward. I thought I'd mention it because it felt relevant.
Interesting, Mr. Hoodie. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess as well. Sorry, I just had this sudden thought that came from Chris's point, was to always keep your character in a state of unease. So don't let them don't let them become safe, if you like. Always have them. There's always a problem they've got to solve. As you say, the cliffhanger at the end of the chapter comes because they haven't resolved their crisis. So the crisis is keep coming and coming and coming.
Yeah.
I love that. Always keep your character in a state of unease. Oof. Beautiful.
Great quote and great advice, Chris. I think that's awesome. We should look into that in our writing group. I think that's a really good thing to look into. Okay, we're going to move on. We're pushing our time a little bit, so we're going to go on to part 2, which is what's a story. And right after this little video, I'm sure Lily Samson's got a great pitch for the Switch. All rhymes. So Lily, play this little video and give us your best pitch when we come back. Go for it.
So, as I said, Eleanor and Adam, like an ordinary couple, get a house sit in glamorous Wimbledon village, and they meet this very attractive and charismatic couple, Sophia and Finn. And Sophia looks like a sort of Hitchcock heroine, and Finn looks like Cary Grant, and they have this kind of real glamour to them. And Sophia and Eleanor become friends, and then Sophia makes this indecent proposal, and as I sort of said, she suggests that they swap male partners in the dark at night without them knowing, because she's conscious that Eleanor is very attracted to Finn, her partner, and that perhaps Eleanor's relationship is pretty stagnant and she's not fulfilled. So they attempt to do this switch, and as the book unfolds, it becomes a bit, as I said, like dangerous liaisons, games of seduction, and Eleanor becomes conscious that Sophia is suggesting this game because she had a more sinister plan afoot, and that's something else. And that's where perhaps it becomes, the thriller element creeps in slowly, and like a fog that gets thicker and thicker, and then it all spins out of control at the end.
Love that. Sounds great. Spinning that control with a thick fog sounds really a really good way of describing things. Interestingly, when you mentioned earlier how, like, in the 70s it was kind of frowned upon, well, it kind of let a bit more loose about the kind of topic, and then it was frowned upon a bit further on. How did you kind of feel when you're writing this story that the readers might receive it?
Well, me being me, I was quite naive, and I thought, oh, this is quite a mainstream crowd pleaser, and I've had lots of really lovely reactions, and some nice reviews, and book bloggers champion it. But yeah, as I said, some people have been offended by it, and I guess I wasn't really expecting that, which is probably just me being naive. But again, it's good to write in a bubble and not to worry about these things when you're.
But as you rightly mentioned, it's kind of one of those things where you get in the Marmite effect, where some people have been maybe offended or don't like it or whatever that might be. And then and you've got like the Cosmopolitan Book of the Year 2024, and you've got lots of praise for it from big critics and things. So you get in that effect, and that seems to be the way with a lot of big books as well. So how did you feel when you started getting the kind of good praise for this book? Was that something you expected?
Yeah, well, I hope so, because I knew that my publishers are excited, and that always, of course, is a very nourishing thing as a writer, to have your publisher saying, "We're excited about this book," in both in the UK and the US, and so I thought, yeah, there's something here, and people were saying it was like very page turning and exciting, and they were enjoying it, and then, as I say, some people really hate it, and then so yeah, it's but I didn't realise I'd written a Marmite book. I didn't really realise that until my reactions. Yeah, didn't realise.
Obviously, you mentioned you've got Eleanor, Adam, Sophia, and Finn in this complex kind of situation where they're switching, and there's a lot of deviant kind of conversations going on. How did you balance that with the character development? Were there a lot of struggles you went through? Any advice you can give? Because that seems like a bit of a minefield when you're writing characters with that much kind of interconnection.
Let's have a think. So, yeah, I mean, I sort of, yes, the characters needed to be developed more and more through each draft. So, I mean, this is a trap that you can easily fall into. So, Eleanor is with Adam, and she has this amazing chemistry with Finn, who she's having these switches with, and there's this ambiguity in the book as to whether the men are also playing the women. Maybe the men do know what's happening, and so they're just pretending not to. So there's a bit like a French farce, isn't it? But anyway, there's this ambiguity going on, and the problem with Adam, say for example, was that so he's sort of, you know, almost like initially he was just like the token husband, you know, the bland character, because he can't be too exciting when she's falling for the charismatic Finn. So he had to be fleshed out and developed, because he just wasn't going to be convincing. And I think the richer the characters are, the richer the conflicts in a way.
Yeah.
If Eleanor is more torn between a husband she does care about, who is a genuine character, and whom she feels a lot of guilt about, and has a sort of real turmoil of emotion, that sort of makes the moral conflicts more interesting and enriches them, and makes the book has more depth, and makes it more of a pain. I was going to say a painful read, but you know,
it's not a painful read. It's a very enjoyable read. Yes.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
Lily, from that, I was going to ask a question again, linked to the book that I read today. So again, I'm not going to say it, but it had 2 twists, and I think the second one ruined the book for me because I didn't like it. So my question off the back of that is, how do you know when to put the twist in to have that sort of longevity? Because you sort of like, you build up to it. So if you put it too soon and then you don't have another one, it could ruin it for the reader. Or if you put it near the end, it could be the perfect sort of satisfactory read. So how do you manage and navigate that twist? And then off the back of that, how do you know that twist is enough? Or, you know, like, when do you stop twisting, I suppose, is the question.
Yeah, I mean, twists are like very tricky, especially because as the genre's got more popular, readers are now looking out for the twists. So when I wrote the first draft of The Switch, I seeded my end twist. I just thought, well, I've got to set it up. I've got to put little clues in. And then my agent said, no, you've got to take this out because it's, I guess, the twist. And the readers are becoming more and more savvy in the genre. So that makes it more challenging in a way. Rather than seeding things, you've got to misdirect them and send them in the wrong direction. So I think a good twist, it's good to have one at the end because you want that firework ending and so on. Perhaps one about halfway through, because again, going back to sort of classic screenwriting theory, you've got your midpoint of the book, and that's often a point when you want crisis to be rising to a climax. Because the reason I like this 5-act structure is because sometimes you can end up with a bit of a soggy middle where it's a little bit slow. So to try and avoid that, maybe go for your midpoint reversal or twist or crisis. Things. The crisis needs to be perhaps not climaxing, but at least intensifying at that point. But yeah, I mean, twists are tricky because if the characterization isn't deep enough, they can feel very contrived. I think that's the problem. They've got to feel very true to the character. Otherwise, you just think, and indeed, and again, so with the Switch, I've had very divisive reactions to the end twist because some people are a bit too shocked by it. Yeah.
How do you do that then from a writer's point of view in terms of, like you said, some of the best twists when I think back to books that I've read are when you're quite close to the characters and then you genuinely don't see it coming. But then, like you said, some of the twists that don't maybe land are characters where they're there all the way through the book, but it's just too left field. And it just feels like, hang on a minute, this character is mentioned once. I don't care enough about them for this to have a major impact. So how do you navigate that as a writer?
It's really difficult. I mean, I guess, because quite a common thing I've read in some thrillers recently is where, you've got a really, as you sort of say, you're wondering who the villain is, and it turns out to be like a really innocent subplot character who's hardly in it at all. So it's the last person you would guess. But then, as you say, there's no depth to the characterization as to why they're going to commit a crime. So that becomes a bit unsatisfying. I guess often the best twists are reversals. So I was reading a good thriller. I won't give the title away because otherwise I'll spoil the book. But you're reading along and you think that you're with a sympathetic and very nice protagonist, very nice sympathetic character, and then a third of the way through it twists and you suddenly realize, oh, this character is a con person, a villain, and it just that really kind of got me because I really hadn't anticipated that. So I guess a reversal of mood or a character going from hero to villain to hero is often a good technique, I think, for a twist. Yeah,
I love that. Good advice.
Yeah, I am. Behind Her Eyes for me was one of the best endings in terms of twist because it had a twist that I didn't see coming, and then it punched me right in the face with a bigger twist. And it was one of those things where if you get the twist right in that kind of sense, you can go back entirely through the story again and pick up so much that you completely missed. And that's because the breadcrumbs were completely oblivious to you, or you were oblivious to them. And I think that's a real skill. So yeah, if you can do that well, I think you're onto a good thing there. And clearly you have, especially if people are very shocked by the end. I think that's a powerful thing. If people are thinking, I just wasn't into that, then I think it's kind of a flop. But if they're shocked, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Whether they like it or not, I think the shocking twist is a really positive thing.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to move on to the final part of the show because we're having a good conversation and time is pushing on and we need to fit this bit in. So if you have questions for Lily, or if you want to throw us a general question, whatever that might be, send them into the comments right now and we'll ask our staple questions right after this video. And then if there any come in from you guys, we will ask those right after. So part 3 coming right up, community questions. It's time to put the video on. Yeah, I don't know why my voice went so high then. Okay, community questions. Chris, start us off.
Yeah, so if you could take any character from fiction and make that character your own, which character would you choose and why?
Make that character my own.
Yeah, so you could do what you wanted with them. You could write a new story with them. You could include them into one of your stories. You could, it's entirely.
Well, maybe I would like to take Patricia Highsmith's Tom Ripley, because he's sort of one of the most fascinating characters in thrillers and crime fiction. And of course, I really love the new adaptation on Netflix, which I think is the best adaptation of Talented Mr. Ripley. I never really liked Matt Damon's interpretation of his character, but Andrew Scott and the script and so on, I think it really gets him just right. So it would be fun. It'd be quite interesting to bring Tom Ripley into, because he's very much of that time, and so it'd be interesting to bring him into the present day and have a modern story involving Tom Ripley. And
nice.
Good
answer. I've yet to see that, and it's on the list, so I'm looking forward to that one. Okay, Lily, if you could change the ending to anything, and this could be a book, it could be a TV show or a film, what ending will you change and why?
Well, I was thinking a lot about this, and I came up with several thoughts. And one was maybe season 3 of The Fall. Do you know that? You know the crime TV series The Fall, which had Jamie Dornan playing the psychopath and Gillian Anderson was the cop. Because that is my all-time favourite crime series. But it sort of really ran out of steam by season 3. Well, just within it. Yeah. So I just like to have, there's because it's so interesting, because that's about a battle of mighty opposites, isn't it? It's like the classic cop killer setup. But the characterization is so rich and interesting, and they're such great actors that seeing them in this game with each other is so fascinating, including that a really amazing scene that just goes on for about 10 minutes, where they're just sitting at a desk and going back and forth, and their acting is superb. So yes, perhaps I feel like season 3 needed a bit more of a sort of climax of this battle of two mighty opposites. Yeah.
Nice.
So, Lily, I'm going to ask you a question that's linked to The Switch, in terms of, if you could take one character from one fictional series and switch them with another character from a different fictional series, which 2 characters would you swap, and what would they be doing?
So maybe we could swap Doctor Who with Tom Ripley. Tom Ripley would be going around in the TARDIS, being
That's a great answer.
Instead of sorting planets out, he'd just be murdering aliens.
Imagine that. The murderer steals the TARDIS.
Yeah, that would be funny.
Brilliant. Well, the BBC definitely watch our show, because they steal our guests afterwards. So if that happens next season in Doctor Who,
we're on to you,
got
BBC.
it from here.
Yeah, we're on to you. Okay, yeah, that's a great question, Chris, and a great answer. Let's have a little look. What have we got there? Before we get on the morbid questions, Chris. Okay, if you weren't a writer, so writing had never been something in your life, what do you think would have been your dream career?
I don't know. Well, writing was the dream career, and there wasn't really much else that I was good at. And I have been fired from jobs for writing instead of doing the office work that I was supposed to do. But maybe the only thing I think of when I think of this is perhaps something involving animals, because I'm a massive cat lover. I love animals, and I grew up really, wanting to feed birds and go to the zoo, and I loved my cats and so on and so on. So maybe I could have been a vet.
Yeah, you need to update your bio to include the fact that you were sacked from jobs for writing in your jobs, because that is brilliant.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was. Yeah, no, it was good in the end, because
of course, things happen for a reason. You're on the right journey. You're writing The Switch. The Switch is written, and it's out there. Go on, Chris. Get us some morbid questions in there.
Well, we've got some questions in the comments, so I was going to ask them.
Oh, yeah, go on.
One says, Halo says, if you could merge 2 book universes, which would you merge and why? We did cover that with Doctor Who and Ripley, but if you've got any others, that would be cool.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we should merge The Wind in the Willows with The Secret History. So at the end of The Wind at the end, because like The Wind in the Willows is quite interesting because you've got Toad of Toad Hall. Like he's clearly he's like an addict really, because he's always crashing his car, and so maybe at the end, and then he's like the really naughty, wicked character, and the rest are all kind of quite nice. But maybe at the end, instead of them all happily living after, they have a bacchanalian rite, as in The Secret History, and then Rat and Mole and Toad murder someone, and have to then maybe they murder Badger, and then they're like, we've murdered Badger, and no one in the animal forest is allowed to know. So we've got to cover this up, and how can we live with the guilt of Badger?
I think my childhood just got turned upside down. Jesus. Toad, what have you done? Amazing.
Brilliant. Another good answer. Got this question that says, can Lily discuss the process of how narrators are chosen for the audiobook of her novel?
Good question.
Interesting. Yeah, that was really interesting because I think sometimes publishers involve authors and sometimes not. But I think more these days they do involve authors. So I got sent, I got Lottie Chesterton at my publisher sent me 3 sample narrators for Eleanor, and she sort of said, "What's your favourite?" And I chose Avita, and then it was the same with picking Polly for Sophia. I got to listen to like 3 sort of voice extracts, and then I think she approached them and got them to sort of read extracts from the book. And so I basically had a bit of a. She sort of chose the sort of 3, the shortlist. She shortlisted them, and I sort of chose the one I liked the most.
Nice.
It's a really tough thing, isn't it? Because I went through this with my audiobook, that when you have your character's voice in your own head, you picture them a certain way and you hear them a certain way. So when you start having voices narrate them, I was very specific and picky about it. Were you the same way?
No, because actually I'm not. I don't have that kind of musical ear. Like I don't listen to music, and
That's all?
No, not really. Not apart from a bit of Bowie, because everyone loves Bowie and he's wonderful, and a bit of Madonna. Well, that's it. And so I think I'm like when I go to like a reading and an author is reading, I find it very hard to digest the reading. But as soon as I open the book and read, like I'm digesting it very well. So that's just me. And I'm saying, like, you have that idea of who your character is. So I totally understand what you're saying. Like, so you obviously have that sense of what their voice should sound like.
Yeah. I just had a thought there, Chris, and I don't know why we've never done this. And you talked about reading. Do you think we should get authors to read a bit of their book on the show?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we start with.
Would that be weird?
That's a bit of pressure. Unless she wants to, by the way, you can by all means. But yeah, a little bit of a reading would be good.
Would you be up for that, Lily, or really don't have to? But
I think it's a nice idea. But have we got time? Have we got more sort of questions?
That's down to you. We got a little question there. Another one.
Yeah, if you want to grab a copy of your book, I'll ask the questions that we've got in the chat, and then if we've got time, we can do that. So, what reaction do you want your readers to have most? Is it surprise, horror, etc.? So, what are you after when you're drafting a novel? What are you hoping for?
Interesting. Well, I want them to. That's really interesting. Yeah, I suppose it's like you want them actually to have quite a spread of different emotions, because it's that sort of contrast of feeling that makes a novel rich. So, which is, I guess, why you in a lot of great books and films there's that mix of comedy and tragedy, because the two heighten each other, and that's why I love Dangerous Liaisons, because what's really interesting about that film is it tricks you in the first half into sort of thinking it's like a cynical comedy, and then in the second half it changes tone, it becomes like a tragedy, and it's all the more deeper and richer because you've been laughing uncomfortably in the first half, and then suddenly the characters you really start to sympathise with them and feel them. So I think I quite like books that have quite not necessarily different tones, but that make you feel like kind of a range of emotion. And one thing I wanted to do, say with the character of Sophia, is that you probably weren't going to like her very much for much of the book, and then suddenly at the end you find out who she is and what she's been through. And I wanted to sort of the reader to perhaps have an empathy shock moment, which some people have said they've had. Well, they suddenly think, oh, but this is why she's done these difficult things and proposed this really dodgy idea, because this is what she's come through. So I think that's always really interesting if you can sort of try and make a reader really empathise with a unlikable character.
Yeah, I like that.
We've got another question in the chat, and then if we set it up, I don't know if we could do it like this, Agate, where you give your sort of final message that you do, and then Lily reads a section from a book, and then we end on that. So we sort of like, when she's finished reading, she waves, and that's the end of the show. And then we could clip it, and it'd be a really good clip.
All right.
And then maybe we could do that in the future. End of the show, the author sort of read us out, so to speak, a bit like in Jonathan Ross, when the artist play the show out, it'd be reading instead of music. No. So Annie's question is, who would you like to play the leads in the movie version of your book?
Oh, that's a really hard question.
That is tough. I mean, four people there. If you really, really struggle, maybe we can social media post this, but it maybe think of one or two, perhaps.
Oh, who are you thinking of?
I don't know. It's a big sea.
I'd like to see a young Gillian Anderson. That'd be pretty cool.
I mean, I might have to I have been asked this question before, and I had a good look round, and can't remember who I came up with, which is awful, isn't it? Because I might have to have a think, and then.
Well, Jenna Ortega is in everything at the moment, and Zendaya as well. I'm just having a little look at something. So it depends how young your characters are.
Because you've got two couples, so they're in, say, around mid-30s. They should be.
Okay.
Well, I'm gonna go out there on a limb, Agate, and say the La La Land stars, Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling.
They're not 30
them
anymore.
in there.
Yeah, but they're
I bet they are.
great. Oh, Emma Stone.
I bet they're not. Hang on, who was it? Who? Emma Stone?
Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling. I bet they're close.
Right.
Get them in there. Instant,
okay. Emma Stone was born in 1988, so she is 36.
Yeah, that would be fine.
What about Gosling?
Say no.
Yeah, we'll tag him.
What about me? No, I don't know. No,
Ryan Gosling. Let's have a look. Age. I need to put age there, don't I? Ryan Gosling apparently is 43.
Yeah, he looks a young 43 though. He'll be all right.
He does definitely.
But the thing is, in the book, Finn is specified as looking a bit like Cary Grant, so it's got to be a young Cary Grant.
Okay.
There we go.
What we do is we'll have a look for you.
Richard Madden could maybe be Finn.
Oh, Richard Madden.
Hooli. No. Yeah. I think you've got a sympathizer for your film here. No, not asking the question. Okay.
All right. No,
don't ask it. No one wants to know.
If Lily gets a section of a book, then she can read us out. So if you've got anything to say, Agate.
Oh,
I'm just going to grab my book.
Well, while Lily grabs the book,
that'd be great.
I'll say thank you to her. No, she's gone. Before she comes back, thank you so much for tuning in and watching this show live. We know it's a Friday evening, or maybe in America for you guys that are tuned in, it's early on in the afternoon, but we still really appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for listening back and watching this back. It means the world to us. If you could leave us comments once this video is finished below the YouTube video, that really, really helps. And like I said at the start of the show, please consider tagging some friends in our social posts or send them links, whatever. We'd like to grow this community more and more and more. And thank you so much to Lily Samson for coming on the show and telling us her story. Lily, you've been amazing. And we can just say thank you. And we look forward to The Switch and clearly the adaptation that's going to happen on this book, because there's nothing else like this story around at the moment. I'm sure it will get there. So thank you so much from us.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much for
Lily,
inviting me. It's been really fun. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. And before you start reading, can you just let everyone know where they can find you on social media and where they can buy your book, things like that? And then we'll obviously hear a section and we'll wave goodbye.
Wow, yeah. So this is actually the proof copies. It's got a different cover. Yeah, so you can get The Switch in. You can go to Waterstones. There are big pile of signed copies in Waterstones Piccadilly, because I just was signing there, and Goldsborough Books. You can also, Asda and Tesco are apparently stocking it, I've been told by my publisher. Or you can go for bookshop.org and Amazon, of course. So big variety of choices there. And what was I meant to say?
Just where we can follow you. Yeah, all your socials.
I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram. So on Twitter, I think Lily Samson author. And yeah, if you Google search me, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah. Well, when we share the show, the Lily's links will be there anyway. So if you can't find her, just come onto the show thing and you'll find her.
Great, thank you.
Cool. Over to you, Lily.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay.
So when you finish, Lily, just give us a wave and we'll end the show. So read as much or as little as you want, and then when you finish, just give everyone a wave, and we'll wave too, and then we'll end the show.
Okay. Well, I'm going to just read chapter 1, which is just literally just over a page, so nothing too long.
Yeah,
and
don't read the ending.
Little taster.
Yeah, first ever read out. Like it.
Tonight it all begins. As I sit on the sofa watching a Netflix crime series with Adam, I can't quite believe I'm going to go through with the plan. My nails, once well maintained, are now ragged and blunt. I feel certain that, at the last minute, I will chicken out and curl up in bed and escape into sleep. For God's sake, the weapon's right there in her kitchen with blood on it, Adam playfully mocks the detective on screen, who keeps missing vital clues in the shakily scripted drama. I resist the urge to yawn. I didn't sleep very well last night. I tell Adam that I need the toilet. Upstairs, I flush without using it and tiptoe into our bedroom. Adam looked surprised when I gave it a thorough clean yesterday, even using the Hoover extension to spruce every corner, and ironing all the bed linen before putting it on. I've always been the messy one. The new Habitat duvet cover is white with little green sprigs on it. I smooth away a crease with my hand. On Adam's side is a bedside table where his iPhone is charging, a box of tissues, and a few Arthur Conan Doyles. There's a small table lamp, and I unscrew the bulb gently, centimetre by centimetre. I click the switch. Nothing. If Adam gets anxious, if he reaches for the lamp in the dark, it won't help him. From the window, I gaze out over the rooftops, lights going on in the houses as people settle down for the evening, the last rays of the sun fainting the pale pink sky. My eyes fall to the clock, 7:36. 4.5 hours to go.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.